So yeah, I think one thing led to another, and I cut to like 2019. I was observing what was happening in the ICO market, and I was like quite befuddled, to be honest, to see that millions of dollars just flowing in and out of the system. And I was like, is this real? Is this happening for real? I came to this realization that, okay, on one hand, we have all of these reports talking about the problems of climate change and what it's going to do.
Yeah.
And we also have reports saying that, okay, if we don't tackle climate change, this is the amount of loss that we are going to bear as a society and as an economy. And those numbers are huge. Now, why is it that if we understand that these are the potential losses, can we not rotate money into projects that are actually solving that problem and are ensuring in their own ways that we don't get to that stage?
Hey, what's good, ReFi fam? John here with ReFi Podcast, bringing to you an episode with my friend Utkarsh Patel from Solarpunk DAO. A few weeks ago, they released their Earthcoin, a vision of a solarpunk future that allows anybody who wants to transition from petrochemical money into regen money to do so in just a few clicks. Now, this definitely isn't investment advice or an offering of any kind, but I think it's a really interesting educational dive into the mind of a human who's been immersing themselves in nature from a very young age and has been digging underneath what is causing this complex crisis of climate change, biodiversity collapse, topsoil degradation, you name it. He has a vision of a solarpunk future that is a really interesting reflection of his own personal journey, studying environmental sciences and becoming an entrepreneur, building products and services for sustainable companies and organizations in India and further afield. I remember when I first met Utkarsh in one of the early founder circles, I was really captivated by his just fierce and unnerving determination to move forward on his vision. It can be very easy to discount things that we see that don't quite look and seem like the patterns that we're used to. But it's clear in witnessing the progress that Utkarsh and his community at Solarpunk DAO have made in releasing their custom AI PFP collections, as well as this initial release of the token, that they are committed to financing regeneration wherever possible and to experimenting on the edges of crypto economic design. It's super fun to notice that they've chosen TDF as one of the projects alongside Helios, as well as Ethic Hub, and also Coconut Network. This really is a pioneering experiment on the edge of ReFi that I think would be fascinating to dive into. Thanks so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoy the show. Do let us know what you think. Every 5-star review does really make a massive difference. Cheers. Utkarsh, my friend, long time no see. How you doing, brother?
Good. How are you doing, John?
Mate, I'm feeling very alive here in Portugal. It's a lovely day. Watch the sunrise over the river. And yeah, man, super excited to jump into a conversation. It's been a while. It feels like we both started a journey at the same time, and it seems as though you've hit a really major milestone. How's things coming together over at Solarpunk DAO?
Oh, it's been quite the ride. I feel, I think 2.5 years since we started on this, and I'm just truly fascinated to see the space blossoming in its own way. And I keep on saying this to my friends also, that I'm so glad to have found such kindred spirits across the world that resonate on this level of thinking and are also equally passionate about doing something like this. So yeah, I'm just truly grateful for that.
Man, so cool. Well, kudos to you guys for pushing through probably the wildest crypto bear cycle in history and building something really fascinating, man. It feels like you've brought together so many different intricate parts, and you're shipping and you're continuing to provide value and move towards this vision of a solarpunk future, which I think is so incredibly admirable. But I'd love to, give a little outline for our time together. I think it would be great to hear a bit about your background and when you really committed your life to climate. I think it's so fascinating to hear people's journeys. And then I'd be curious to know, kind of the major challenges and obstacles that you're trying to solve with this project, and maybe to pull apart more about what this vision of a solarpunk future actually looks like and what it might look like in India and further afield, as different parts of the world are taking up the strands of this story. And then it'd be cool to grab your thoughts around the movement of the refi ecosystem, where it's headed, where it's falling short, what we need, and the different kind of capital that can really help projects like yours succeed. But why don't you kick us off with your journey, man? Where did it begin? Was there a kind of pivotal moment where you thought, hey, you know what, this climate thing is my thing and I'm going to give it my life?
Sort of, yes. I think the focus largely wasn't on climate for me in the beginning. So I have a background in like environmental sciences and economics. That's what I minored in. And ever since I was young, like the entire family does minimum of 2 weeks in the jungle every year. And blessed to be in India. I mean, we've got like insane amounts of diversity across the country and lots to see, lots to explore. And I've, from a very young age, happened to have built like a strong connection of sorts, experiencing those ecosystems and what they have to offer.
You just spent 2 weeks with your family in the jungle, just like
every year.
Wow, man.
Every year.
Yeah. How did that tradition? That's super
because
interesting.
dad's a wildlife photographer, and like he goes crazy with this. So it's religiously we do this 2 weeks a year, and that's kind of been like I think the setting is where like I've built my connection. I've also been able to like see the difference, what it's like living in those spaces and inhabiting cities.
Yeah.
And I was gradually seeing every year after year the diversity decreasing, more encroaching. And, every time you go to the jungle, the people over there, they tell you 5 new problems. And it was just quite... it's depressing, to be honest, to see such spaces suffer. And you feel it firsthand. It's problematic. You see so much plastic over there, and it pains you to see that. And it's people wanting more land to do agriculture, a lot of other reasons. There's a lot of poaching happening at times. So, yeah, all of those things like really hit me quite hard at that young age, especially because we cherished it so much.
Yeah.
And I kind of decided that, this is what I would want to pursue and I would want to get an understanding of. And that's why environmental science was not a very popular major, but I ended up doing it. And post-graduation, like I was keen to do something in the space, but everywhere you speak of this, like it was mainly seen as a CSR activity, right? That, okay, you want to go save this and you want to make this better. Okay, take some money from our CSR budget and go on. But that is not what was needed. And there was actually, for the longest time, there was so much debate about whether climate change is real, people putting arguments back and forth. And like, there was no consensus till I think 15, 16. Post which you saw that like, at a macro level, people are at least agreeing that, okay, this is a major problem and we need to do something about it. And I think in my journey, I've had like exposure towards ecosystems. I've had exposure towards auto components and hence got to see EVs develop at a very close pace. I was also involved in a lot of solar installations happening in the mountains, Himalayas in India. I did a 6-month internship over there.
Oh, cool.
So worked on a bunch of that. And traditionally, my family, we are farmers. So I think all of those things came together and trying to build a holistic understanding of what the climate change problem is.
Yeah.
It's got so many moving parts that like it's hard to put a pin on something in specific. And so I took a step back to first understand like what are the root causes of the problem and to see what can we do. Yeah. It's actually quite disillusioning, right? Like as an individual, when you understand that, it's quite a systemic problem, and what do you do in your capacity when you're quite like occupied with all the other priorities of life? And even if you understand this is a problem, but you don't have the bandwidth to do anything, it makes you feel quite disillusioned. Yeah. And that, in some sense, was my starting point to say that, okay, I think now that there is consensus on the problem and there is willingness to take action, but people don't have the bandwidth to, and it's not their priority, what can we do? Like, what can we create out of this combination of things that we can get where we need to, and also like have these people take active participation in whatever capacity they can. So I think one thing led to another, and cut to like 2019, I was observing what was happening in the ICO market, and I was like quite befuddled, to be honest, to see that like millions of dollars just flowing in and out of the system. And I was like, is this real? Is this happening for real? And I dug deep, and I think like 2019, I started observing all these DeFi apps that were being formed at that time. So Uniswap, Compound, Aave, Maker, stuff like that. And then I was like, okay, maybe there's something happening here, and I let it be. And we then started a climate finance org. So we were just focusing on raising funds for solar projects and EV projects in India.
Okay.
And doing that, like, kind of took us to a point where we realized that, okay, I mean, these projects have a very specified return that they can provide, 8 to 12%. And when I would go and talk to people and say that, okay, we have all of these projects, we know we need to do this, why don't you put some money? And majority of the responses that I would get was that, okay, I think it sounds great, and we know we need to do this, but I don't think we can allocate like a substantial portion of our portfolio because A, it's illiquid, and B, I think the market is giving us better returns. And it's safer because all of these companies have a track record, this, that. So I came to this realization that, okay, on one hand, we have all of these reports talking about like the problems of climate change and what it's going to do.
Yeah.
And we also have reports saying that, okay, if we don't tackle climate change, this is the amount of loss that we are going to bear as a society and as an economy. And those numbers are huge. Now, why is it that if we understand that these are the potential losses, can we not like rotate money into projects that are actually solving that problem and are ensuring in their own ways that we don't get to that stage? And it also like, let's say solar and EV, there's a lot of money flowing into it. But if you look at like agri, towards looking to shift to like regenerative agriculture or even land parcels that are willing to say that, okay, we want to conserve this space or we want to regenerate this space and we don't want to use it for any commercial activity. There is no revenue model or there is no remuneration for those cases. A land is seen as valuable only when you can do something on it. A forest in itself is not seen as very valuable. Whereas, it's surprising because natural ecosystems are the only scarce resource in the solar system. I mean, you have minerals and materials everywhere, right? Like, it's 4 billion years of 4.5 billion years of evolution that we are here right now.
Wow.
But we have not managed to value what is actually the most important for our survival. And on the contrary, we've ascribed so much value to a shiny piece of metal, and also Bitcoin, right? Like Bitcoin's got like $1 trillion market cap right now. And I think so. It's just to say that, okay, there is a lot of potential in the meme game, and there's a lot of power in the meme game.
Yeah.
And if we can like divert that attention towards things that are actually needed, which are essential for us to like survive and thrive, there's a lot of potential that can get unlocked through that course. So that's what like got me excited about the Web3 space, because I was seeing people put money into things which had like negative value, I would say, right? Like there's nothing going on. It's just some communities, this, that. And that is what was exciting to see, if I can like harness that potential for these use cases. I think that's a game changer, and that's what got me in.
Dude, super interesting. I love the start of your journey is, being described these, annual visits to the rainforest, to the jungle, with your family. And your dad obviously has a very keen eye for nature, and you're, developing an ability to be immersed in life. And then probably going back to a city and, doing your studies and learning all about these challenges from these different perspectives. And I think it's interesting that you at a young age, were really grappling with the question of like, what is the root cause of all of this? And I think it'd be interesting to hear your take on this now. Like, what do you think is the root cause? Because you very accurately described, like, hey, natural ecosystems are the most scarce thing in the entire universe. And I love that framing. I've never heard anyone say that before. But what do you think leads us to so poorly value nature and life in general, and on the other hand, be so wrapped up in these other things, which, in the big scheme of things, don't actually seem to matter?
Evolution has played its course. For the longest time, like natural capital and its ecosystem services were abundant. So I feel like, let's say, if you go to like 400 years back as a collective, I don't think they would have the need to value these things. But then, let's say, cut to capitalism and then the last 200, 300 years that we have had, where it's been great. I would say that, and I don't agree that it's all bad. I think capitalism has played a pretty pivotal role in getting us here. But it's got a lot of drawbacks. And I think we extracted so much material and we have transformed it into so many useful things. And I think objectively, the standard of life is far better today than it was 100, 200, 300 years back. At that time, I probably would not have said that, okay, let's go and value nature. But cut to today, where like there is massive deforestation, degradation, loss of biodiversity, I think we are realizing what's actually valuable. So if we want to continue growing, like it's important that our base, our foundation is very strong.
Yeah.
And this is what provides that base and that foundation. So it's necessary that, now we create that base and the foundation for us to do whatever we want to do going forward.
Yeah, totally makes sense. And I think we're at this tipping point now where we've built a complex, globalized society with, some 8 billion people on the planet, all striving for more. This narrative of growth is predominant. And the quality of life that you described, so adamantly, I don't know what to even say, but embellished by...
I think there are trade-offs.
Yeah.
I think there are trade-offs, right? Like, I think standard of living is great, but maybe I would not say that the well-being has improved so much.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think mental health has improved so much. Our physical health has taken a hit. So spiritual health has gone for a toss. So yeah, there are trade-offs. And I think we now need to start optimizing for what we really want.
Yeah, totally, man. And I'm curious what your experience at COP was with this whole idea around climate finance and, the narratives that people are bringing to the table and what folks are thinking of the work that you're doing. What's the reception been?
I think so. My idea of going for COP was exactly this, to understand what the larger ecosystem is looking at ReFi from. And I kid you not, most of the events or the panel discussions that I've gone to either revolve around the lack of finance flowing into projects. And then on the other hand, the lack of impact verification of these projects to ascertain whether the capital is justified.
Yeah.
And the more I would go to these things, the more I would realize that, there are so many projects within the ReFi ecosystem that are working on these exact things.
Exact points, yeah.
And I think there is a bit of a communication and education gap because they are not fully aware of what's happening in this space. Whereas in our case, we are working on problems in silos, but it needs to now go further in terms of, letting people know that there are these solutions that are being built. COP overall, I think my takeaway was that there's a massive community out there ranging from state actors to institutions to corporates to NGOs to activists that are really, really passionate about the problem. All very well-intentioned also. But I think there are some limitations that they start facing because of the structures in which that they operate.
Yeah.
And that doesn't let them do what they feel is really necessary. So, there is something called the Green Climate Fund that was set up by the top 20 nations, saying that we will be allocating $100 billion every year for adaptation and mitigation in the developing nations.
Yeah.
That was a massive failure.
Totally.
I mean,
Which wasn't delivered
they could do it. Yeah, they didn't do anything. I mean, $100 million for all these nations together is a joke, I feel. And if they were serious about it, they would have done it. But they have not done more than 15, $18 billion up until now in the
Wow.
last 8 years.
Wow.
So instead of the 800-900 billion that should have come, like it's a tiny fraction, not even worth measuring. That is definitely one. And I mean, they're all frantically trying to like figure out solutions to this.
Yeah.
And every year they make commitments. And I don't think they don't mean it when they make those commitments. To a large degree, they do.
There's no
But
punishment
when
for
they
it.
go
There's no
back,
accountability. It's just like, yep.
there's no accountability. And yeah, I mean, we are all hoping for all of them to like act in their goodwill and do what's right.
Right.
But understand, like they have 10 other priorities, right? When you
course.
go back to your nation, the country has 10 other priorities.
Right.
So there is no one like borderless organization that is taking the responsibility.
Yeah, of course.
When you elect your leader, the leader takes responsibility for ensuring well-being. In this case,
for
we
its
don't
constituents.
have one.
Yeah.
UN does a good job of setting the narrative and providing facts, but I think in its own way, in structure, it's quite toothless. So I mean, they know this is a problem. And my biggest takeaway was that I think they were trying to see what could be the next version of Green Climate Fund and what that looks like. And this is water cooler talk, so don't like take me on it. But internally, there's a lot of conversation saying that, okay, maybe this current financial system is not equipped to like handle this crisis. And maybe we need something else. Now, for me, I don't think that they will ever be in a position for them to like recreate the financial landscape within those premises.
Yeah.
But I do feel that like people outside can definitely create one. And that's why that was my biggest takeaway from it. That like I think what
Super
all of us
interesting.
collectively are doing in ReFi. Yeah.
So they're waking up to this idea of an alternative financial system designed with a different outcome in mind. That's fascinating. I wonder where those ideas are coming from, because obviously it's a very, ReFi native exploration. But I'm curious how you described the work that you're doing to folks at COP, everyday folks who aren't immersed in the Web3 landscape. Like, how do you tell them what you're up to?
I tell them climate finance.
Yeah.
I tell them climate finance using the blockchain rails. I think if I use any more jargon, then they look at me all weird. So, and I think it's fairly straightforward to a great extent. I just tell them that, okay, what if you could just buy a token and then make sure that all that dollars are getting funneled into on-ground projects?
Yeah.
Like, won't it be massively simple? A lot of the big funds that were there, would say that, okay, we have allocated 500 million and 700 million for climate and stuff like that. But, say that, okay, we want the right kind of projects that are giving the right kind of returns and impact. And we want it all transparent. So I think when the system matures, we are going to be in a very, very decent position to start answering all of those problems.
Interesting. I'd love to have you walk us through the whole system of what you've built and maybe who it's for in particular, what kind of capital allocators and individuals that this is really designed for now and who you think it'll grow into. So walk us through the landscape, man. What have you built?
So in a nutshell, what we've tried to do is, larger thesis is that the 5 sectors that we focus on, that's energy, transport, agriculture, buildings, and conservation ecosystems. The understanding is that this is going to be the biggest transformation that humanity undertakes.
Yeah.
Never before have we had 8 billion people on the planet, and never before have we had such complex infrastructure catering to our needs. And now we've come to a realization that, okay, the current infrastructure is not sustainable and we need to transition. And so all of these systems need to transition. So when we're talking about your entire energy, your transport, the way your food is produced, the buildings that are made, and how you value natural ecosystems. So that is sort of the underlying thesis that in the next 30 years, we are going to witness this massive transformation that we are going to undertake. And that transformation needs, I think, I mean, the numbers are like from 4.5 to like $7 trillion
Yeah.
on an annual basis for the next 30 years, right? So that's like 150 to $200 trillion.
Yeah.
Now, we are able to do as a collective, I think 20-25% of that number. So there is a massive shortfall, and that keeps on adding up. Every year you don't do that, it gets piled on to the next year. I mean, now we know that the 1.5 degree is out of the window. We have crossed it,
Yeah.
and it's this. There's a massive gap in terms of the finance that it needs.
When you say
So
as a
what can
collective,
we
we do
do?
20 to 25%, what do you mean by that?
So, I mean, all countries plus like the corporates or whatever investments that they're making
Yeah.
is not going beyond like $1.5 trillion,
Right.
trillion to $1.5 trillion
Okay.
across these sectors.
Across these sectors.
So
Okay.
across these sectors, yeah.
Okay. So the gap is
there's like
accruing.
yeah. So yeah. Again, when going back to like what we were doing before I got into Web3 was just like vanilla climate finance. There is no way for us to give them returns over and above, let's say, what the project is earning in dollar terms. And that's only because we are not measuring the impact and we're not valuing the impact. Let's say if you invest in something and it gives you a 20% return, it's adding some value to society. In this case, when a land steward shifts from industrial farming to regenerative farming, we are not recognizing the positive externalities that are accruing to us as a society because of that shift.
Totally.
We are only paying that steward for the food it produces and not recognizing everything else. And hence, it's less viable for the land steward to transition, because for them, they need to optimize the yields that they get from their land. So I've spoken to so many, right? And they all want to.
Yeah.
They all unequally want to transition, but then they're like, dude, we cannot handle the risk. We cannot handle the 3-year transition period, and it's too much. We live off the land, and it's too much to ask from us.
Yeah, they need support.
So
they
all
need
of these
capital,
things,
they need time.
you need time, you need patient capital, and you also need someone to understand that, okay, the transition is better for us as a collective, as a society.
Yeah.
We want more land stewards to shift to these practices. And same with, like, let's say, ecosystem conservation. There is no way for us to value what it is providing. So the idea was that, okay, what if we are able to combine the positive externalities that these projects are producing, plus the actual returns that these projects are anyways generating.
Yeah.
And if we combine the two, maybe we cross that threshold where it starts becoming lucrative for people to just make a dollar investment. Even if, let's say, they're not fully sold on everything, but still they are looking at it saying, okay, I'm putting $100 in and I'm getting 125 at the end of the year. It's still something for me. I've done what's right, but I've not had to compromise on my returns.
Yeah.
Because let's face this fact, right? Like, we live in a world where everything is decided by return on investment. Except for government spending, all money is allocated on basis of ROI. There might be like some cherry on top saying, okay, I want this kind of impact and I'm optimizing for that. But at the core of it, it is ROI. So if you're not able to give that necessary ROI for that capital to flow in, it's always going to be an uphill task. We are always going to like try and convince people, okay, do what's right at the expense of, let's say, compromising on your returns or your net worth or whatever.
Yeah, totally.
So
I get this at a high level framing, but let's talk more specifically in terms of like what you guys have actually built and released now. Because I know, obviously you have Earthcoin out in the wild with some liquidity on Uniswap. People can go out there and buy today. And this actually finances a number of projects that are making real world impact across these areas. So I would love to just give a little bit of a sketch and outline in terms of what's live, and then we can begin to expand into the bigger picture. Because I think there's some interesting points here that I want to unpack. So yeah, if you'll just go into specificity, then we can take it out.
So as of now, the way it stands, two things. One, it's live on Uniswap. So there's a Earth DAI liquidity pool that's there. So anyone can go put their DAI and get Earth out. That's just the liquidity bit. But what happens at the back end is that those are tokens that are already been minted. Only when you mint new tokens do those dollars go to the treasury.
Okay.
And then those dollars are allocated towards the project. So right now we're running like a pilot batch where we have 4 projects. One is a clean energy plant from Helios based in Mexico.
Cool.
We are also funding Coconut Network, which is based in Dominican Republic.
Amazing.
We are funding TDF, which is based in Lisbon. And there's an Ethica project that's based in Brazil.
Okay.
So these are the 4 projects that we are looking to fund in the first batch. And what we will start doing now is, so the way we look at it is that, let's say you have nodes running the Ethereum chain, or you have like these miners running the Bitcoin chain.
Yeah.
We will be creating nodes where these nodes are tasked with the responsibility of constantly purging their petrodollars for all. So it's these nodes which have been given the permission to mint new Earthcoin into existence.
Yeah, this is a really interesting part of your model. Yeah, okay. And so right now the nodes are people who, like, what specifies the criteria of people who can mint new Earthcoins?
There are 4 rough criteria. The first is, I think you have to have a Solarpunk PFP that we've been making the bespoke characters.
Awesome.
The second is you just have to be active in the community and be able to establish that you understand the intricacies of the design. So, you know what you're getting into, you know how Earthcoin is designed, the tokenomics, and you're aligning with it. And then we just have like somebody from the team right now has like 2 one-on-one calls for us to like explain everything, to clear their doubts and to address any concerns that they would have.
Okay.
And then onboard them.
Okay.
Yeah. So then we give them a soulbound token that gives them permission.
Okay. You give them a soulbound token. So obviously, like, this initial groundwork is classic, Paul Graham, do what doesn't scale, but understand your customer discovery stuff. And I think it's interesting to see that, Common Stack did the trusted seed, where they created a group of people who, they trusted in order to participate in, the Token Engineering Commons launch. And they've built a mechanism where if you're playing multiple games with the same people, you can exclude people who aren't playing, by the rules of the game or aren't acting with integrity. And I think what you've described is like a different variant of that system, where you are building out a new monetary system that is designed to take petrochemical dollars and move it into regenerative space across these different sectors, as you described. And you obviously need some way to trust the first people to give this responsibility to. And I see that part of the equation, but I want to go deeper into the projects that you're financing, because I think this thesis that real world projects are creating positive financial returns, yes, and we can make up for the discrepancy compared to the toxic petrochemical projects, say, as an alternative, by measuring their impact and valuing that. So I would love to just break through, maybe we choose a handful of these projects, because I think the selection criteria for the projects that go into this basket, or into the however you want to call it, I don't know what the right terminology is really essential. So can you walk me through like what determines whether a project can make it in? Because all the ones that you've chosen are in somehow related to Web3 activities. So just walk me through that, and then how you actually are measuring this additional impact that they're creating, and how that will eventually translate to perceived monetary value.
So as of now, the understanding is that any project, and whether it's a company which is fully focused on, let's say, setting up solar plants, or is also an ancillary unit. So if it's like maybe manufacturing panels or manufacturing batteries, or setting up like battery panels stations for you to recharge. So it's a broad focus on the sectors, and then whatever is needed to enable the transition within those sectors.
Okay.
So let's say if you're talking about regenerative agriculture, and there is some company that's coming out with a product which is going to abide by the regenerative agriculture like practices, but help the land stewards in whatever they're doing, that being able to finance that product for the land steward is something that we would be looking to do. So we don't necessarily focus on tech innovation as a funding. But if there is a product that they want to scale to, we would be more than happy to help that. But as of now, the focus is to start with actual projects like which are doing the transition.
Doing real
So
world
solar
impact,
plants, wind, solar farms, wind farms, battery plants, large scale conservation projects, even large scale farmers looking to shift part of their land towards something like this. EV taxis is something that we're also looking at. So in the EV space, we're just not going to do like private transport. Everything that's public transport is something that we would be willing to look at. So yeah, it's a broad spectrum, but within these sectors.
Yeah, and I think, Helios as an example, financing solar installations, like that's easy. It's like there's clear return, there's clear value there. It's pretty heavily de-risked. There are real companies with real assets and balance sheets, and they're collateralized. These loans that people are taking out in order to fund the solar installations. Like that makes sense. But I think where it gets gray to me is, say a project like TDF or some of these others, which are obviously doing very impactful work, but may not have the capital yet to properly value and capture the value that they're creating. And so you're taking a bit of a bet and a risk, right, in financing these projects early on and assuming that the projects will A, be successful, B, create an impact that can be measured, and C, that impact can be valued in some way and eventually, return some value to the original investors of Earthcoin. Is that right?
To a great extent, yes. I think there is some risk obviously involved in being able to fund projects that are traditionally not getting funded. Otherwise, they would have been traditionally funded also.
Yeah.
And the idea is that I think the way we understand risk needs to shift. I think we look at risk in pure monetary terms, but let's say, what if there is no economy to de-risk anything at some point in time?
Sure.
If the worst outcomes of climate change are quite destructive, and is that more risky or is this more risky?
Totally.
So I think we're trying to also rephrase risk in some way, and that's why it's very important that we curate the people that are minting Earth, because it's right now going to be the set of people that are understanding this difference and also saying that, okay, money is better put into these projects and let them grow and blossom. Yeah. And obviously, having those projects in existence in itself is a massive return. But if it's giving monetary returns, if it doesn't give a dollar value return, like we can always equate it to Earth. Let's say, the typical example that I like to give is there's a huge parcel of land that's a forest. Yeah. And that forest has no commercial activity going on. Maybe the only revenue they could make is by selling carbon credits, which is not enough for the piece of that land.
Sure.
Now, how do you value that? There is no way to, let's say, come and be like, okay, this is what this is how much the land parcel is worth. Now, if some commercial property developer comes and says, I'm willing to pay you that much, that landowner will be more than happy to sell it off. In this case, the Earth community and the Earth minters would go that, okay, no, we value the land more as a forest than as a developed property.
Okay.
And that's where that perception shift comes in, that, okay, this in its current form is more valuable to us than, let's say, a town built on this.
Yeah.
And if we're able to start doing that, if we're able to say that, okay, I'm happy that the land steward is shifting to regenerative practices, and maybe the return comes over 7 years with well-nourished food and healthy soil and like a robust ecosystem surrounding that land. That
or an eco-village built on it.
An eco-village built on it. So all of those things, right, which the current system doesn't seem to value, we start valuing here. And as we start valuing that more, it has a domino effect. Other people are encouraged more to start creating this. And the ones that are working on this also start getting better access to like capital.
Yeah, okay. So
the ones that are valuing it also start getting more returns.
Yeah, and so is it proposal based? If I say, hey, there's a 20 hectare project up here in Portugal, I'd like to, ask for this much from the Earth Treasury, then, effectively any member of the community can submit a proposal and secure capital for, the purpose which have been described. Is that right?
It's two things. So I think you put up a proposal. The team will first have a look at it to see if it's aligning with the thesis and if it's viable at this basic sense. So whatever you're saying is true. You have some track record. We do some due diligence on the project, and then we would leave it to the community to decide, because essentially it's the community's treasury. It's their money.
Yeah.
And they would then get to decide whether we want to allocate more to solar installations or allocate more to conservation. So we have tried to categorize these 5 segments in terms of percentage, which represents their contribution to the greenhouse gas emission equation. Mm-hmm. So energy has a 30% contribution, agriculture has a 15-20%. So our treasury also would be split accordingly.
Okay, it's allocated according to that emissions, global emissions.
But at the end of the day, it's the community that's going to decide whether we should allocate treasury to any particular project, and also the priority of allocation.
Okay. And yet the simplicity of the kind of meme coin energy still remains penultimate, right? You're still looking to attract that capital that just wants a single thing to buy and doesn't necessarily know everything about solar or regenerative agriculture, but they want, put their money towards planet positive work. They can buy Earthcoin, and then they basically can choose to participate at a deeper level in terms of what that coin supports. Is that kind of the rough scape of it? And then where does the actual maybe I'll get your take. Why do people buy meme coins? What do you think are the primary drivers?
Things, right? I think it's the community angle to it and the sense of belonging to a particular community, which resonates with how you think.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest factor is just ROI. I mean,
Return.
You hear so many, you hear stories of people making 50x and 100x, and it's mind blowing. They also, it's a larger topic, but people are looking at ways in which they can just increase their wealth in a shorter duration and then do other things that align more with them.
Yeah.
And this provides them with that opportunity to do so, right? It's a gamble. You put money into 10 coins, one clicks, great. I know of people that put $100, $200 into 150 coins.
Yeah.
And, if it clicks, it clicks. It doesn't click, money down the drain. So it's nothing more. You can't say anything more than a casino. But overall, I think there are some memes that are stuck, right? I think Bitcoin has stuck and very hard stuck. And we have seen it transition from being digital cash to digital gold now. And it's there is an ETF now. So I think it's gone mainstream as much as it could to a great degree.
Yeah.
And we are seeing ETH and other things following that, creating a lot of utility and having value. So I think there's a midway to this. I think what we see ourselves is between, let's say, an ETH and a DAI. Maybe DAI is over-collateralized, stable. ETH is it's its own thing, and it's not backed by anything. It's backed by a lot of tech and the chain and the L2s and everything. Yeah. In our case, Earth is backed by the actual projects and then everything that is created by those projects.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. So I think, following this idea of a meme coin, obviously you guys are creating range-bound stability mechanisms, which I believe was inspired by Olympus, and there's lots of other intricate nuances there. But if we just follow this idea of saying, okay, we have this huge humanitarian transition that's taking place. There's a capital transition, but there's also a cultural transition. And it sounds like you guys are trying to harness both of those energies. This cultural energy that says, hey, I want to belong to this Solarpunk future, and I want, to value things that Solarpunk values. And I want my money to reflect those values. And I guess Earth can be an experiment, a hypothesis of how to harness that energy towards positive gain and create, a simple enough but powerful mechanism to finance projects on the ground. And I guess the the question is, will enough people take that leap into the kind of solar punk meme energy when there's so much degen meme energy on the other side of the equation, right? Is that sort of one of the key hypotheses is, converting that meme energy from degen to regen in a way?
Definitely, it's a part of it. I think when I speak to, I've been a degen myself, and if I have to look at a project which is giving, let's say, 25-30% returns on an annual basis, um, I would allocate like a good chunk of my stables to it, and I would keep like a small portion to do my degen activities. If you look at like large scale capital allocation, right, like majority of the money is parked in the lowest risk assets. So let's say like treasuries, sovereign bonds, green bonds, etc., etc. And then like a smaller part of the treasury or capital goes towards equities, and then a tinier part goes to crypto. Now, I expect that to get mirrored in the crypto landscape also eventually. Let's say if you have $1,000, you would want like $600 into like safer bets.
Yeah.
You don't want to like roll the dice on the entire 1,000.
Sure.
You would keep a couple of hundred for your degen activities.
Yeah.
So that's what we are trying to like, focus on. That like when you have a crypto portfolio, there is, I mean, if you are in stables, you are getting like 3-4% on RA max. That's about it. You have a bunch of these real world projects coming in, they can offer you 8-9%.
Yeah.
What we are saying is that we would be able to manage at least a 25% denominated in earth, of course. And also the fact that like the mechanics are designed as such that there's going to be like a very gradual price escalation over time. As the treasury increases, as our impact increases, as people's recognition increases, there will be a gradual uptick into the way it's priced. So, yeah, I don't think we are a very regional bet, but I think we are as region
Yeah.
bet a region bet can get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting, man.
Yeah.
Super fascinating. And obviously, this isn't investment advice, it's just for educational purposes. But I think it's been really interesting diving into, what you guys have built and why and how it works. So, is there anything else in the kind of tokenomics side that you want to dig into as we talk about what you guys are doing?
No, yeah, sure. I think overall, it's, I think where we kind of would stand out eventually is that as a collective, right? And you also see with the ecological benefits framework coming out that the reason we designed it in this way is that I've seen the carbon markets take like 2-3 decades to mature.
Yeah.
And I don't think we have matured yet. The big part of that is that it's voluntary, and it's, except for, let's say, good PR and offsetting guilt, it doesn't do much for the people offsetting it. Like it's, you made a commitment towards it and you're doing it, but it's actually a hit on your balance sheet. It's hitting your bottom line. So that's why I feel like it's finding trouble scaling, because there is no inherent incentive for people to do so at scale. And in our case, what we've said is that, okay, let's say if it's taken a couple of decades to price carbon, we have realized that our air, our water, our soil, our biodiversity, our nutrient density in food, all of those metrics are trending downwards. So if you value these things, and if you think that like we want to see more of this happen, let's not wait for another 2-3 decades for these credits to mature. Let's put a price on it today. And if you put a price on it today, you will see more of that happening. And it's not a credit, it's an asset that you're getting to hold. So you are getting rewarded for it. It's not like you have to, like, it's not you're donating and buying a credit and then you're retiring the credit. It's something that you're able to hold and use for various purposes.
And used for various purposes. Is that what you envision? Is that this will ultimately end up being used as a form of currency, medium of exchange?
We're already working on it in ways. I think within the crypto space, the lower hanging fruits are like NFT trades and like maybe getting DAOs to start paying some portion of their salaries, 5%, 7% of the salaries in this is something that we're already starting to like work on. But the larger goal is that, so on a side note, like we also run a sustainable design firm where we sell products which are made fully sustainably. And
Cool.
the idea is that we want to start designing utility for this within merchants that are fully aligned with this vision.
Interesting.
So when we say like the regenerative paradigm, everything, right, all micro and macro things need to shift.
Yeah.
Now the micro starts to shift on a day-to-day basis in terms of the products you use, the services you use, and how they are running in the back end.
Yeah. Yeah.
So even in today's time, like any company that's doing things sustainably or regeneratively doesn't get necessarily rewarded by the market. It's a good talking point. People tend to get some brownie points for like the activities that they're doing, but the end purchase is still very much based on value for money. Even let's say, like I've seen this with Tesla, that people love the car and then it being an electric is great.
Yeah.
If it was not a good car, people would not go and like put all their money on an EV. So
Sure.
that's what we're trying to say, that if these merchants are doing the right thing and creating good product,
That's interesting.
how can we start like incentivizing people to buy from them? Because the more you buy from the right kind of merchants and companies, the more you're encouraging that cycle and that those cycles to start scaling.
Yeah.
And that's when the economics start helping. So
Yeah,
that's what we're
interesting.
doing. We have spoken to 4-5 merchants right now. They're more than happy to, because they all have an inherent cost of selling.
Yeah.
And if we are able to like provide them with buyers at their rate, they're more than happy to accept part payments. So
it's interesting.
that's what we're.
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of the kind of community currency space where local businesses will underwrite a community currency and, decide to accept payment or partial payment in that form in order to stimulate the flow of value locally towards those goods and services that people care about. And I think, yeah, there's definitely some interesting design space here, man. It feels like you guys have, pulled a lot of different threads together and are pushing towards a very ambitious vision of the Solarpunk future lived out in monetary terms. And I love that you're taking risks and trying new things and, experimenting on the fronts of culture and technology and community and economics. I'd be curious to get your take on how, this sits alongside the example of a Glo Dollar, right? I think USD Glo is a great example of a project that is just, it just makes sense. It's, it's a stable asset backed by dollars with the yield from the treasury going to, support social projects. And the charity that they use is, really well known and super highly rated, but the impact itself isn't necessarily on chain. So I'm curious, to understand, how you see yourself alongside Glo, and if there's any other interesting kind of, impact currency experiments on your horizon that are inspiring the work that you're doing.
I think Glo is great for what it's trying to achieve. It wants stability because it's a stable coin. So they're going to be, from what I've understood, is they're going to allocate the reserves into US treasuries and then earn like a 4-5% on that, and then allocate that interest towards. I'm forgetting the charity's name, but
same. GiveWell or something like this.
So, and I think it's great because, but I feel like the quantum of money that you're able to allocate is far lesser. Because you can only, as your treasury grows, you can only allocate, let's say, 4-5% of that on an annual basis. And maybe that's great for that segment.
Yeah.
But the quantum that's required for this transition is magnanimous. It's hard to digest the figure also. I mean, I would say it, but I don't know what that figure looks like in real life.
Yeah.
And we need that money here. So I think for us, that's why we designed it in a way that like we have to ensure everything is going towards projects. There is nothing that we can keep. And then people have to take that leap of faith, I guess, to some degree, that, okay, these are the projects that we want to see more of. And all of these mechanics are designed so that we are able to like funnel more capital into these projects and then start seeing results in due course of time.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. I think, there is an element of faith in all of this journey, of humanity figuring out how to switch from petrochemical backed everything to renewable backed everything, and everything in between being a regenerative transition. So I appreciate that, and I don't expect you to have all the answers figured out. I think you're trying to address one of the most complex challenges of our time. The climate finance landscape is laden with complex systemic issues. I just wonder, what do you think needs to come into place in order for this to be wildly successful? Like, what would you need to see over the next 2 or 3 years to really watch this take off?
I've narrowed this down. I feel like it's aligned capital. It's people who are resonating with the vision, feel very strongly about what kind of work is happening here, and are also able to, let's say, take a bit of a leap of faith and play ball with something like this. I think for us, what I would like to say is, all capital that comes into the treasury, like the safety is that everything gets allocated to real world projects. So if those real world projects are not being successful, is the potential downside that we can face. But at the end of the day, they're still building that necessary infrastructure out.
Yeah.
It might not give us $1 return, but we 100% know that they're doing what's needed for us to transition. So
it's interesting.
The downside is there. There's potential risk for sure, but I think the upside is massive. And I sincerely hope that there are projects where, let's say, are able to attract some amount of attention from the Web3 native crowd.
Yeah.
And I think it probably might not happen overnight. It's going to be a gradual step-by-step process. And it's just about how we can do what we want while also giving them what they want.
Mm-hmm.
I think finding that sweet spot in middle is when I feel like things can take off. And embedding these things into small actions, right? Like there's so much happening in the crypto space anyways. We've had a bunch of projects that were trying to get the yield from Aave into like credits. And that's great, right? It's not that risky. People are happy, 3% going here for something great. So even let's say putting 0.5% of your Uniswap transaction charge towards something like this. It's doable. And I feel like this space gives us a lot of opportunities like that to be able to tap into, get us to a critical threshold where then, we can start speaking to crowd outside of the space and show that, okay, dude, we have done all of this. It's not that like we're just talking. There is real impact being created, and it's not that complicated after a point to engage.
Yeah.
I think a lot of improvements are being made in terms of the UX UI also. And if we get actual utility out of this, I am confident that there are solutions in terms of the tech that will address all the issues that we face.
Yeah, I think the UX issues are major. I also feel as though the success of the projects that you guys do choose to fund early on is massive. Seeing a really great return come through this Helios solar energy installation in Mexico is vital. And making sure that those early bets on real world assets, environmentally, ecologically, and socially positive projects really do, what they say and produce return that people can really resonate with. I think the success of those early projects that you guys fund is massive. And I'm sure over the next 6-12 months, we're going to see another raging bull cycle. It seems pretty much obvious. Now there's Ethereum ETFs around the corner. Bitcoin's at 52K already, and it feels like we haven't even gotten started yet. So I really do hope that you guys are able to capture some of this mimetic energy of number go up and planet stay positive, and that you guys are able to finance real world projects on the ground and keep doing the good work that you're doing, man. But for folks listening, like, what help do you need? What can people do to get involved? And what's the best way for people to stay in touch?
I think simple right now, maybe following us on Twitter, Solarpunk DAO, and hopping into our Telegram. There's a lot of activity now happening since we have launched. And final one would be to go find our liquidity pool and go buy how much ever DAI you're willing to spare. Just start holding some earth and start experiencing what that's like. It doesn't need to be a major amount right now. Take baby steps. Go put some money into the pool, see what it's like. Go stake your earth, see the projects that we are funding. And Come join us. Yeah. And lots of interesting things happening in the Telegram.
Awesome, brother. And are you going to be any upcoming conferences people can meet you in the flesh?
Yeah, for sure. I think definitely I'm planning to go for Token 2049 in Dubai, which is happening in April. And then ETH Barcelona and ETH CC, I think that's happening in Brussels this year. So definitely going to be making it for that. And hopefully ReFi week before that.
Amazing. Yeah, ReFi week at TDF.
Yeah.
Exact date TBD, but would be amazing to see 2024 version of that off the ground. And yeah, man, it'd be super cool to bring the Solarpunk community on the ground here in Portugal. And yeah, I would love to get a meal if you're here. So let us know, bro. But man, big kudos for your fierce determination and your willingness to take a big leap for the planet. And yeah, thanks to your pops for taking you and your family out into the wild, showing you the beauty of nature. I'm sure he's super proud. And it's been a great pleasure connecting with you today, Utkarsh.
Same here, John. Same here. Thanks for this.
Awesome, man. Take care. Thanks so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the show. I would be so incredibly grateful if you had a couple moments to leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen to your podcasts. This really helps us reach incredible guests and to gain traction with audience members just like you who are looking for the right levers to make a contribution to this unfolding symphony of regeneration. Appreciate your time and always do let us know what you think. If there's anything we can do to improve, drop us a note in the comments and we'll listen in and figure out how we can make this a service to this unfolding movement of regeneration. Thanks.